Good morning, evening, or afternoon, depending on what side of the pond you're on, and welcome to an extra special edition of Across the Pitch. My name is Phil Kennedy, and I'm joined by the founder, author, and creator of Accrington Stanley Fanzine, Raw Milk. Welcome back to the show, Josh.
Thank you very much for having me. Always good to be on the show. Looking forward to it.
Now, the last time that we talked to you, you had put out your second issue, and then you put out a third issue during the early part of the 2019-20 Accrington Stanley season, and we never really got a chance to catch up with you on that. So with football on pause right now, I figured we could catch up with you on what was in the last issue. I also see that since football has shut down, you've been doing some digital stuff too.
Yeah, absolutely. The third issue went on sale in December last year, which seems quite a long time ago now, and so much changed in the world around us that it seems like a lifetime ago. But yeah, that was in December. Usually the fourth issue would be scheduled to come out, well, round about now. It was this time last year that the second one came out. And we usually take advantage of the sun and sort of get out there selling it to people. And it's always a lot easier when the sun's shining, especially in northwest England. But obviously, with everything that's going on at the minute, that's been put on halt. So what I've been trying to do is get in touch with people, and a little bit similar to what you guys do, and just trying to speak to them, sort of pick their brains a little bit, and then put that into... Well, I'm thinking I'll put that into some sort of website content which people can just read at their leisure as they're sat at home, self-isolating as they should be at the minute.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the way that a lot of things are having to go now, is with everybody stuck inside. It's kind of, well, let's get things up on people's computers and, give people something where, they can kind of escape from everything that was going on and just, read an article about football. And now Raw Milk is a fanzine, so you feature a lot of fan-authored articles. Tell us a little bit about that. I know that Tony Robinson, who is one of the co-hosts here on Across the Pitch, he had written an article, I believe it was in the very first issue.
Yeah, that's correct.
I actually had one in issue 3. I don't want to talk too much about that, but how many different fans have you had write for your publication now?
Well, I think I've had a few dependent on sort of what issue it's been. So obviously, I like to do sort of different sorts of fans in each one as part of a sort of like a feature issue. So yourself, obviously in Arizona, Tony when he was in Canada, and the French supporters.
Je m'appelle Jimmy Bell.
Correct, yeah.
So you had the French supporters. So basically you had in the first issue it was Tony from Canada. And then you had the French supporters group in the second issue, and then you had me from the United States in the third issue. So you're really kind of in each issue illustrating how Stanley has grown a global following.
Yeah, and that was the idea behind that. I think the thing that is easy to forget for some of us that are around Accrington and around the area is that people are taking a little bit of notice of things further afield, which hasn't always been the case, to be fair. I think, the stuff that you guys do and having people coming over from places like France would just be seen as it's a little bit alien for us. But I mean, the only thing that we've really had like that in the past has been the group of Norwegian fans that come over a couple of times a year to see a game as well. So the thinking behind it for the fanzine was I'd like to give those different sort of fan groups a chance to say, why it is that they came across the club, what attracted them to Accrington Stanley and Accrington as an area, and just sort of build that understanding through the fan base of we're not all born, 200 yards down the road and we just support Accrington because it's because of where we're from. There's different stories that come to the club, and I think that's an important story that needs telling at times.
Yeah, I mean, I think with a club like Accrington, that probably from 1970 when the club reformed, at least probably until about 2005 when you got back to the Football League, if somebody was following Accrington, they were probably from Accrington. Once you get back into League Two and now especially up to League One, then you start to get a little bit more recognition around the globe. And I think what I found here in the United States, and this really kind of fits me personally, is because as somebody that went to high school in the U.S. in the 1990s, if you followed soccer, which is obviously what we call it over here in the 1990s, you followed Manchester United, you followed the U.S. men's national team, and that was an American soccer fan. And, I got into the sport when I was about 25 is when I really started falling in love with the game. And I just never wanted to be that 25-year-old guy that goes out and says, okay, I'm going to start rooting for Manchester United. I kind of, I wanted to search for a team that had more of a story. And certainly here with Phoenix Rising, even though Phoenix is a massive city itself, Phoenix Rising is a second division team. They're not MLS. And because of that, a lot of the supporters that go to Phoenix Rising that are season ticket holders, they have that same mindset where, they're like, we like the grassroots of football. We don't like the money. We don't want to support Manchester United or Liverpool. And then, I start telling people a little bit about Accrington, and the story just really resonates. I mean, we have about 20 people over here in Phoenix that have joined the official supporters club now.
That's fantastic. And like I say, probably unheard of until, at least 15 years ago. I think what it comes down to at times is what people really want to get out of supporting a football team as well. Because you have, if you look at a team like you just mentioned, I live in Manchester, and on a Saturday, Manchester city centre is just full of every nationality that you could think of, everyone donning red scarves that have supported Man United. Or now, with the rising of City, you're even getting Manchester City fans coming from abroad now. And for the first time, you're seeing kids wearing City tops in Accrington, which, when I was a kid, it was just Man United tops or Liverpool tops. But then I think, and there's nothing wrong with that. They probably keep those top teams winning, and the money that they pump into the club makes sure that those teams stay at the top of the ladder, doesn't it? But it comes down to...
If you're from Manchester, there's nothing wrong with rooting for Manchester United, or, even somewhat from the area. I always say that Phoenix Rising Stadium from my house, if I started driving there in Accrington, I'd already be in Manchester. Geography is a lot different over there.
True. And that's even the case with some clubs in Britain. You look at teams like Plymouth Argyle, who get upwards of 12,000 people through the gates every week, and they're in the division lower than us. But if you look at the geography of the club, 70 miles away.
Well, Cornwall, the whole county to the west doesn't have any league teams at all. I don't think there's a team above the 9th division anywhere in Cornwall. And then in Devon, you have Exeter and Torquay and Plymouth. And like you said, that's about it until you get to Yeovil, I would think.
Yeah, exactly. So, I always think about it. Imagine if you placed one club in Lancashire and didn't have another one for 70 miles or whatever it is between Exeter and Plymouth, you'd be dealing with a club on the size of Barcelona. It'd be that big. But so you're dealing with a lot of there's a lot of competition around, isn't there? But like I say, it comes down to that thing of, certainly for people that aren't from Accrington, what do you want to get out of football? Do you understand that football is about winning? Well, okay, then maybe you are better off supporting a Premier League team then, and then you can just go to the pub and you can watch the team and you can win all the time, and then that's fine. But then are you someone who thinks that there's more to it than winning, maybe, and you understand community aspect of football and what it really represents to local people? And then you look and you find, clubs more like us. And I always think as well, if I suddenly started supporting an American sport, I don't have any sort of, I'm not interested in any American sports, to be honest with you. I don't support any teams over there. If I suddenly got into American football or basketball, what kind of team would I support? And, to be honest with you, it'd probably be one of the main ones, just through ease of following them. So I have a lot of respect for you guys for sort of picking out Accrington, and really you spoke in the article about deciding how you were going to watch games and how that was difficult for you before you could actually see a proper game live. So I have a lot of respect for going out of your way and not choosing the easy option there.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that really is what it comes down to, is part of it. Is just availability of coverage. And of course, if you were going to start following American football, I mean, I guess you have the Jacksonville Jaguars that come over and play in London at least once a year. It's kind of England's home team, if you will. But I mean, it'd be a lot easier to follow the New York Giants or the Dallas Cowboys, just because there's going to be so much more information out there. And that was kind of how I got started with supporting Arsenal. I just kind of said, who else is out there besides Man United? Who do they hate? And they're like, well, Arsenal. I'm like, okay, I'll just start supporting them because I wanted somebody different than Man United. And then it wasn't until I really started attending games here and learning about the community aspect of the sport, because with American sports, it's so much different, because at the end of the day, the sports team is just a sports team. I mean, it's part of the community in a sense that, the bars and the restaurants and the parking garage and the hotels around the stadium, they're part of that. But you don't have American sports teams that are literally in the community the same way that football teams, even over here, I'm not in an MLS market, so I can't speak for MLS, but with the USL and the Phoenix Rising, it's much more of a community atmosphere.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, I don't know how big is the league that sort of Phoenix Rising are involved in. Do you think that the spirit that Phoenix Rising have as a club, do you think that that's the case in other clubs in their division, or do you think it's a very a particular thing in just Phoenix itself?
I think yes and no. I think Phoenix is certainly a special case, because anytime you put a second division team into a metro area of 6 million people and that's their only team, that's something a little unique. I think obviously the success that we've had on the field, certainly having a guy like Didier Drogba actually suit up and play for us, I mean, all of those things have been unique in growing Phoenix Rising into something that's particularly special in this community. But if you talk to guys in New Mexico or guys in San Antonio, there's folks that are every bit as invested in their USL Championship club. And then even if you get into USL League One, which is the third division here, you've got guys like the Richmond Kickers, and there is a community atmosphere here for football, but it's kind of one of those things where it's one place at a time, and it kind of has to build in each place separately. Because like we talked about the geography, this is something I've said 100 times on the show, but it just really puts things into perspective. Phoenix Rising, our closest away day is Las Vegas, which is actually further than Accrington to Portsmouth. So,
wow. Okay. There you go. Yeah.
If you're going to an away game, it's not going to be any less than a 5 or 6 hour drive.
Yeah, so not many people are doing that, I guess, which is understandable as well.
We've had buses and things that run over, and I mean, just certain places like Orange County is usually a pretty good travel because, I mean, one nice thing is, we have big freeways here, so you just kind of get on the freeway and go 75 the whole way. But I mean, there's some places. So for Phoenix, Las Vegas is a travel place. New Mexico, Albuquerque, that's about an 8-hour drive, but a lot of people do it. Orange County. We do have San Diego coming in this year. That'll be another reasonable trip. But all of these are still between 5 and 7 hour trips. And these are our closest rivals.
Okay. So do you play every team twice, home and away? Is it just the standard, or do you play them 3 times like they do in Scotland?
Well, actually, it's split into 2 divisions of 17 teams, and then you play each team in your division twice.
Okay, I see. I'm just trying to get my head around it.
Oh, yeah, no, it's a completely different system because, well, for one thing, the USL Championship, which what we're talking about, is the second tier here. And just to give an idea of competitiveness, I believe that Phoenix Rising, who are probably the best team year in and year out, would be upper mid-table in League One. Lower teams might be lower table in League Two, would be kind of the scope of the skill level. I would say that, like the best teams would compete in League One. The worst teams would struggle and probably get relegated from League Two.
Yeah, but that comes with the territory of sort of building a new sport, doesn't it? I mean, credit to America, because the United States, because they've done a lot more in building our sport than we have over here of building any American sports. I mean, we have the odd game, but you guys have got divisions set up. Thousands of people going to watch Phoenix Rising, for instance. I mean, I know that we have the Wembley game for the NFL, but there's nowhere near that kind of coverage and consistent coverage for any American sports in Britain.
I think it is something will come with time, but it's what people are asking for. Because, like I said, in the 90s here, it would have been the same thing. We'd have a game of the year when Manchester United would play Arsenal, and that would be the one game you could watch over here for the season, or the World Cup, And then that was what football coverage was. It was really in 2006 more started being broadcast over here. I'm a 2006 guy. Matt, one of our other co-hosts, is a 2006 guy. Like, we kind of have this club over here of people that really started watching football in 2006 because that's kind of when it became accessible over here. But then it was really having the Phoenix Rising come here and eventually becoming a season ticket holder and going to all the matches that before that, I wanted to go out and make a podcast and learn about every team in the 7th Division of England. You have to go to the matches to actually feel that, I think.
Definitely, yeah. There's something you just can't get through the television. And it's just that experience that needs to, and you get the same here with people who, maybe you support a team like Manchester United, but you never go to any games. Well, that person's not going to feel the same passion for a defeat, if they're watching it on TV and they don't understand what it's about going to watch the game, than if I saw Accrington lose. It's 2 different things. It's a roller coaster of emotions that you don't always get through Sky Sports. And not many people, certainly people who support lower league football understand that. I don't think many wider people do understand that passion.
Yeah, I mean, if you've never experienced it in person, there's really not anything equivalent here. That the closest thing that I would say that I've ever been to in the U.S. to a lower league soccer atmosphere would be minor league hockey. If you go to a minor league hockey game, the atmosphere there would probably be the closest comparison that I could make. And I mean, I'm throwing that out there because, maybe some folks have been to a minor league hockey game, but have never been to a lower league soccer game. And that's just where you get that passion there. And it's about people playing for the love of the game, not for money. I mean, and that's the thing is American sports, ultimately at the top level, they're all about money. The Premier League, La Liga, Bundesliga, they're all about money. If you go to the second division in any country, you're going to start to see guys who aren't there because of the money.
Yeah, very true. And I think that we're seeing the backlash of people understanding that now with the COVID-19 thing, because we're seeing clubs in the Premier League coming under a lot of scrutiny from fan bases because they are choosing to furlough staff and not paying staff what they should do. And I think people are really... The strange thing is, certainly about Premier League football, is there seems to be, for me, the bubble it must burst at some point. It cannot keep growing in the way that it does, and the amount of money that gets invested into the clubs. Surely something has to give at some point, and maybe it's going to take something terrible like this COVID-19 pandemic to show just how fragile organisations like the Premier League are, when teams like Burnley have come out last week and said that they're going to struggle to carry on. Because if you don't have that injection of money frequently coming in at all times, the bubble's going to burst. So maybe it's going to take something as terrible as this to show top-level sporting leagues that, it can't carry on being like this. It's so alien at the minute. I was speaking to Paul Lodge last week as part of an interview that I'm going to put on the website. He's the manager of the youth team set up at Accrington. He was saying that, and he's played top division football in the 1980s. He's been there and he's done it at the top level. He was saying that they look at Premier League football in terms of the Accrington youth setup. They look at the Premier League sort of like a European Super League that they can't really tap into. He sees the Championship now as somewhere that is almost like an old style first division before the Premier League and before the massive money investment that went into it. They see the Championship as the marker for where their players should be and where they need to be sort of aiming footballers to get to. Because when you look at the Premier League, even teams like Burnley, I'm just mentioning them a lot because they're local to me.
Sure.
They bring in kids from Europe. They bring in the best players from all around Europe. So how could... It is almost like a European Super League that's based in Britain at the minute. Even in the Bundesliga, in La Liga, the percentage of players that they have from Germany in the Bundesliga and Spain from in La Liga, I'm pretty certain that would be a bigger percentage than how many English players play in the Premier League.
I would say that would be accurate without doing any information. I think that's part of what gets discussed so often is why even if teams like, a Barcelona or a Madrid or a Bayern Munich, take that away, the Premier League is the gold standard. It's the highest level of talent anywhere in the world, top to bottom.
Yeah, and it's the fact that it's, of course, you can take teams like Bayern Munich and Barcelona, Real Madrid, but really there's only one team that's going to win by Bundesliga most years, isn't there? There's only two teams that are ever going to win La Liga 9 times out of 10. The Premier League has at least 6 teams that would probably aim to win the league. I mean, I know the last couple of years it's been Liverpool and Man City, hasn't it? But you're certainly right. There's
10 years ago.
Yeah. There's from top to bottom, first team to 20th, the standard in the Premier League is a lot more competitive.
Yeah, a team like Burnley would be, I would think, upper table in La Liga.
Yeah, you'd think so. I mean, that's an argument that gets battered around the pubs often, but you'd think so. Yeah, certainly with the amount of people that get through the doors as well. You look at lower La Liga teams; they're not getting great attendances. They're not that well supported. Spain it's almost like a bigger version of Scotland, because my ex-girlfriend, her family lived in Inverness in the very north of Scotland. It was probably about at least 150 miles from Glasgow. They had 2 Scottish Premier League teams at the time, Inverness, Caledonian Thistle and Ross County, who were 2 miles down the road. And when I went into Inverness city centre, there was a Celtic superstore. So I always think that Spain's sort of like that. You've got people all around the country that obviously support Real Madrid and Barcelona.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's you make a great point, because that's true. And in the U.S., it's kind of divided. For instance, when I was in Pittsburgh, if you go to Pittsburgh, you will not find anything that's not black and yellow in any store, because they have 3 teams there: the Steelers, the Pirates, and the Penguins, and they all wear black and yellow. So you can go to a store, you won't see anything that's not black and yellow. Here in Phoenix, where I'm at, we're basically a transplant town. So you go into a store, you'll see 15 different Major League Baseball hats for sale, whatever team you want. It really kind of depends. But like I remember my brother actually traveled to England about a year ago, and he was in Liverpool, and he's like, yeah, I tried to pick you up an Arsenal mug, and they said they don't have those in Liverpool. So.
Yeah, certainly not in Liverpool, but I mean, I think you'd pick an Arsenal t-shirt up in Accrington. I think that'd be the case in a sports shop. I think maybe the big cities don't, because they have that affinity to their teams, but I'm pretty certain you could get an Arsenal top in places like Accrington. The smaller towns, definitely.
Yeah, I would say that the smaller towns here, like if you're traveling across the country and go into a smaller town, that you might see a little bit more of a spread out selection, because I think that you have a lot of people that might stop in traveling through or something like that. But from what I understand, I can't imagine anyone from Accrington wanting to support Arsenal.
I do know a few, actually. From over the years, I've known a few. But again, that comes down to when I was 3 or 4. Thierry Henry was the best player in the Premier League, and Arsenal were the best team. So I think if people grew up sort of watching that Arsenal team, then maybe a few would be tempted to support Arsenal around that time. I don't know whether they'd have carried it on now into the 20s, because Arsenal have fallen off the way a little bit, haven't they? But it's just people love to watch winning teams. People love to think that they've got an affinity with winning teams. That's why, my family are fond of Liverpool, the Liverpool fans. That comes from probably my dad and my uncle, growing up in the 70s and the 80s and enjoying watching a great Liverpool side. 10 years before that, you've got people that still support Leeds in Accrington because of the great Leeds team. And then in the 90s and the 2000s, my generation, certainly there's a massive support for Man United in Accrington.
I guess one of the things I was getting at is, so you mentioned Liverpool, Leeds, Man United. I can understand that because they're all northern teams. I guess I just can't imagine someone in Accrington wanting to root for a team in London.
No, I think off the top of my head, I think I know one Tottenham fan, and that's not explained at all. He has no good explanation for that.
There's never an explanation for Spurs.
No. I think at school I can remember 2 Arsenal fans. Not to an extent where they were going to games or anything, though. No, I can't see that being a thing.
Yeah, no, I was kind of caught off guard when you said an Arsenal shirt in Accrington. I mean, if you told me a Liverpool or a Man United shirt in Accrington, I'd say, okay, I could see that all day long. But I just know there's a bit of a North versus South rivalry, and any team from London is like a bad word up there.
Yeah, and then I think to be fair, we see that when we go into London as well. People always say there is something different in the air in London when you go to a game. There is, even with a team like us, there is just something different in the air where there is just a strange animosity that we don't see, that I certainly feel you don't see anywhere around the country. They don't like Northern people, I don't think.
It's one of the things that since I've started doing this show and talking to so many people, that it's kind of been something that, as an American, that we don't even know exists, that there's this North versus South rivalry kind of. And in the U.S., it's funny. I know that it's a popular thing to call Americans Yanks in England, and realistically, a Yankee is only somebody that lives in the Northeast, and then the whole rest of the country we're like, no, we're not Yankees. So I think it's still like that.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, that's probably a lazy stereotype, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, I think that it's very. It's something that it's on both sides, where it's just, what you see on television or what you're taught in school. Like, I think about when I go back to grade school and what we learned about England in grade school. Well, I didn't really learn about England in grade school. I learned about London. I learned about and Parliament and everything that's in London, and you don't really learn about the rest of the country in school, so you just kind of think, oh, okay, the whole country's like London. And I think that the same thing, you guys hear about New York or Los Angeles, and you call somebody in Texas a Yankee, they'll be like, hey, no Yankee.
Yeah.
It's I mean, we're getting way off topic here, but this is just, it's interesting stuff that I think this is it's just interesting to me getting to talk with folks and learn the little ins and outs. And I think that when we first started the show, what we wanted to do was kind of explain English football to the American listener, but I think one of the things that we didn't expect is how much we were going to have to end up explaining American things to folks in England. Turns out we're the ones that are weird without the promotion, relegation, and the playoffs. And, we tell people that the team won the league by 40 points last year, but they didn't win the championship, and that just blows people's minds.
Indeed, yeah, absolutely. Like you say, you're the aliens when it comes to that. But I mean, if that's a thing that you guys are used to in America, then why change it for anything else as well?
That discussion actually came up here, and kind of what I felt like is that football, in a sense of soccer football or association football, is a much different sport than American sports.
Yeah.
If you take basketball, for instance, you have teams scoring over 100 points in a game, and that's why you have teams that, the best teams in a basketball season will rarely lose any games, because when you're scoring over 100 points in a game, it becomes where one bad bounce can't cost the game. In soccer or football, association football, it's such a where one bad bounce can change everything, that I really think that single elimination to determine a league championship, it just doesn't fit the sport when the team that won the league by 30 points
but that's true.
And I'm the one who's a supporter of the team that won the league by 30 points and they got eliminated in the single elimination. So I may be a bit biased there too.
Possibly, yeah. But maybe that'll come back. Maybe there'll be better luck next year. Has the season just started then there? Is it a summer league?
Yeah, and in fact, we had one game that we got to go to, and then the league was pretty much put on hold after the first match, and they're hoping to still get it going, but I mean it starts in March, and we've only played one match so far, so we'd be at week 8 right now, so we're already about 7 weeks behind on it, so. Not knock on wood, but yeah, it runs March through November is when we run.
Okay, similar to I know that the Irish League does that usually as well. The League of Ireland, they have a summer league. They changed that to try and sort of try and market it as something different to rugby, etc. But I mean, watching football in the summer sun, that sounds. I'd be interested in that, definitely.
I don't know if you would be interested in it here in Phoenix because in July it's been known to be 110 Fahrenheit at kickoff.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I mean, the weather ultimately is really the reason why is because in the Midwest and the Northeast, it snows a lot. So, if we were trying to have... a December or January matches at a place like Chicago, it just would never happen.
Yeah, and then it becomes a different thing. How do they do in terms of the traditional American sports then? Does NFL carry on in the snow?
Yeah, NFL carries on in the snow, and realistically, most stadiums over here have roofs now, so it's not as much of an issue. With the NFL, honestly, some of the most famous games of all time are because of the snow, but it's a lot different because the ball isn't being played on the ground ever. So I mean the ball is only being carried or played in the air, so it's not. Like trying to dribble through 5 feet of snow on the ground.
Yeah, it becomes something different, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean it's and then otherwise baseball is played during the summer, and basketball and hockey are both fully indoors. So yeah, it really only comes into play for American football, but they do play it in a few places, and certain teams like. Chicago and Buffalo and New England, that's kind of one of their advantages. And teams that play in very cold weather have traditionally done very well because of it in the postseason, because the playoff games usually happen in January.
Okay, right, I see. Maybe we could try and get something like that in Northwest England, try and get our rain to be to our advantage. Don't see how they would do that in football, though.
I tell you what, I don't know how you guys do it over there when I see you guys standing out there and it's 40 degrees and pouring rain. I couldn't do that. I'm the guy standing out there drinking a beer at 110 Fahrenheit with 2 scarves on, so I think I'm crazy. But yeah, what is it like? I notice it in Accrington, if it's raining hard, you guys usually move up a few rows and sit under the overhang there.
Yeah, I mean, it's not too bad behind the goal because you can always sort of move with the drum, jump around a little bit. But I always think that you need a really, really good football coat to survive it, because if you're underprepared, it truly is bitterly cold. Like you never feel anywhere else, because realistically, you're not going to stand out for 2 hours in the middle of December in any other situation other than watching the football. So you probably find cold like it, but it's the long sort of time scale for feeling it. But yeah, it is. To answer your question, I'm sure Darren's can say this as well, but it's unbelievable at times.
Oh, I can only imagine it. The fact that you have a special term football coat. That kind of sums it up right there.
Yeah, it's certainly you need a good investment into a coat to get through the winter. Certainly.
Yeah, here it's more like an investment, and people are coming in with the thing with the water bottle strapped to their backs. And it's
you do. The one that I always think is if your feet are cold and your head is cold, then your body will be cold. So I always think a good pair of socks or 2 pairs of socks at least, and a hat at all times. Because as long as your feet and your head are all right, I think you're usually okay. But if one of them goes, you're in for a bad night.
Yeah. That's when you're back to the looking for another shot of whiskey.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you're getting an extra one at halftime. And as well, we can't have any beer while we're watching the game. So you get as much as you can in that 15 minutes between the halves.
Yeah, that is one thing that our folks over here might not know about is so tell us a little bit about how the beer policy works over there, because this'll make our fans over here feel real lucky.
Yeah, I think it came in during the 1980s. It may have even been earlier than that, but basically the rule is you're not allowed an alcoholic drink within sight of the pitch. So you can't watch the game with one at all. So whether you are in, even if you're in a sponsor's lounge where you've paid for a meal and a nice 3-course dinner and you get free alcohol, you're not allowed any alcohol while you watch the game at all. I think what it goes back to is it has its roots in hooligan culture, and I'm actually reading an interesting book at the minute about it. It's called Bottled, and it's basically a history of English football and British football's relationship with alcohol, and how, originally, basically it goes back to the 1880s, and it talks about how breweries really looked at football as a way of sort of marketing their product. So it's certainly not a new thing, the bad relationship that British football has with alcohol. But yeah, I think the idea is if you're not drinking for 2 45-minute blocks, then at least you can sober up a little bit, and that will reduce any loutish behaviour. But the issue is that the game kicks off at 3:00. So we meet at 1:00. We have 2 hours to fill our bodies with as much alcohol as possible. And then the same at half time. And then after the game, you do even more. So people are going to drink either way. But I think there's been a stop in sort of, it stops obviously things getting thrown onto the pitch as well, doesn't it? But yeah, you're not allowed anywhere inside of the pitch with an alcoholic drink at all.
That is something that we did have happen here in Phoenix last year, where 2 alcoholic beverages were thrown onto the pitch, and was not a good situation. We actually have dollar beer games over here where you buy as many beers as you want for $1 and carry them all into the stand. So that's going to make you jealous.
Oh, that is excellent. Yeah. Yeah, I cannot imagine some of the states that people would be in if that was the case. Honestly, that would be. I'd like to. There's a few people that come to mind when I think about that, and I say that sometimes the alcohol ruling, I can certainly see the reasoning behind it. Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that overall, other than that one incident, that it's been a positive experience, and I think that most people are pretty good at self-policing themselves. But at the end of the day, don't throw things on the pitch, don't get in fights, and just have a good time. I think that's what it comes down to. Definitely,
but obviously, when you look back at the troubles that we've had over here over the years, it's almost like a new discussion that you're having with people every generation about not acting like a complete buffoon at football. But every club has, I guess, a few of them. We're lucky at Accrington. We don't have we don't have any idiots. actually. I've certainly seen bigger clubs and issues with people having a bit too much alcohol, and that fuels that as well.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I mean, it's really it was something that just took me by surprise because of what you mentioned earlier, and the fact that alcohol companies really do use sports as a marketing tool to sell their product over here. And I guess I can't imagine American sports teams losing out on the profits of what they sell in beer during a game, especially because they inflate the price of the beer by 600% during the time of the action. And it's a very different way of thinking than over here. So I thought it was a great thing to talk about. But one thing I did want to say is I know we didn't talk a whole lot about the raw milk issue 3 and things that you have going on now with it, and we're running up on an hour here, so I did want to make sure that we came back and talked about your publication some more, because that was the main thing that we wanted to promote for you with this episode.
Absolutely, yeah. That's my fault as well. Just get interested in listening about Phoenix and things like that, but it's been a good chat either way.
I've really enjoyed it. I think this has been a fantastic chat.
Yeah. Going back to the third issue then. So the player interview, which I usually do, so I do a legendary player interview. So in the first issue, I had Paul Mullen, then Michael Welsh. The third one, I was lucky to speak to Luke Joyce, who was, a player who almost played 250 times for Accrington. He's still playing at the minute for Port Vale, who are a team based in Stoke. He was actually brilliant. He invited me into his family home, and we sat and chatted for almost 4 hours about his time at Accrington. Wow. So there's a big feature. That's the main feature probably in the third issue. Just talking about his captaincy, and he was a captain at a time when we didn't have that financial security with, Andy Holt and the money and the investment that he's put into the town and the club and the community. So it was interesting getting a player's thoughts on, an uncertain time for the club. So that was a good feature with Luke. There was obviously yourself and talking about how you came to support Accrington. And then the player interview that I had was with Lamin Keba Sherif, who's came to the club in the summer.
Excellent.
From Leicester. We spoke about his start in football. He's still a young player. We spoke about his aspirations for the season, what he wanted to get, and what it was like being he's from Leicester, and what it was like sort of moving to a place like Accrington and what he expected from the club, really. And that was great. He was good. We had about an hour phone conversation also about that. He's unfortunately, he's not really put his stamp on the first team as of yet this season. But like I say, he's still young, and I think he's a player that'll try and become a bit more of a, put more of a stamp on the starting 11 next season, perhaps.
He's a guy that's in kind of a crowded area of the field, which is a strange thing to say for Accrington, because usually it's been a small squad, but kind of the defensive midfield, defensive back area, the wing position, I mean, has been a real source of depth for Accrington this year, and that's one thing that's really exciting.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I think it's unfortunate for Lamin to find himself in that position. But like I say, I mean, he's done well in sort of cup games and things like that when he's featured. He's always looked very capable, I think, when he's come onto the field. So I just hope he doesn't sort of lose confidence in what he can do at the club, and he hopefully sticks around next season and tries to get himself in that starting 11.
I mean, I think the guy like Sharif not getting into the starting lineup right now, this is a club, and this will probably be the last thing we should talk about before we wrap up. Is this a club that ultimately is probably going to see some turnover next year? We, obviously the Jordan Clark contract situation has been well documented. Do you think that Accrington Stanley is going to see a pretty big roster overhaul next season, or do you think that we'll see some of the same guys return?
I think again, this has changed in the last couple of years. I think we do enough now to keep a nice sort of core group of players in there. But I think if a player does as well as Jordan Clark has done over the last 3 years, we are always going to struggle to keep hold of him because, to be honest, he deserves a chance. A bigger club, probably making a little bit more money and trying to get a better contract. I think that's like I say, that's something that's changed, but I think we do keep most of the core these days. We have an addition of key players in key positions in the pitch. Obviously that's up for debate where we need maybe a bit more firepower next season or whether we need shoring up in certain places. But yeah, a short answer to that would be we're in a better position now, and we will see change, not as much change as we would have done 10 years ago. Where one season that always comes to mind for me was, I think it was 2010-11 when we made it into the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And out of the starting 11 of that team that played the last game of the season, we kept on to 2 for the next year. So we lost 9 of the starting 11. So it's almost like a different team completely. We're in a better position now. So people like Sharif, people like Ben Barkley, who haven't been featuring that much this season, they'll have, I think Lamin's on a 2-year deal. And I think he'll probably see that out as well. So he has a little bit of breathing space to try and go on. And even if we do lose them, those big hitters like Jordan Clark, there's hopefully people on the bench that are chomping at the bit to try and get into that starting team as well. So I think it's a positive time for the club. Yeah.
I think you hit the nail on the head, and I really don't have a whole lot to add because I 100% agree with everything you just said there. And I think it's come up on the show time and again that back in the day, there was, the 1-year contracts and the 2011 season. I know Bobby Grant certainly mentioned that because he was a guy that was part of that 11 and he is back now. But I mean, I think that, if Jordan moves on, it's certainly well-deserved and we're going to root him on. But I definitely think, like you said, the team has shown over the past few years the ability to keep a core group together.
True. And at the same time, we can't rest on that as well. And I think that John Coleman has shown over the years that, no matter how romantically the fans feel about a player, he's not scared to make a change in that position as well if he feels like the time has come. So it's an interesting time because big players in the side, like take Sean McConville, for instance, as well, probably one of the first names on the team sheet, cemented himself as a club legend over the couple of seasons, the last couple of years, certainly.
Hall of Famer.
Absolutely. He stepped out of the team and Joe Pritchard's fitted in really, really well. So it shows even to someone like Sean, your place isn't always guaranteed anymore, which hasn't always been the case in the past because there's certainly been players that couldn't have been taken out of the side. So it's an interesting time, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the team is headed in the right direction, and at this point, it's just a matter of getting through the period that we're at right now, and everybody just staying home and doing what they need to do to make sure we get through this faster, and hopefully back to football sooner rather than later. But
goodness me. Yeah, whatever capacity that is in, we don't know how it's going to come back. We don't know when it's going to come back, but hopefully it's sooner rather than later because that means the world is in a better place because of it, doesn't it?
Exactly. Well, Josh, thank you so much for coming on, and I really, really enjoyed our conversation today. We, went a little off topic, and I hope I didn't bore you with the U.S. League stuff here too much, but I think it was just great to kind of talk about some of the differences between football on this side of the pond and football on that side of the pond, because at the end of the day, that was kind of what we started this show about in the first place.
Absolutely. Don't worry about that. I wouldn't have asked the questions if I wasn't interested in it. And I keep up to date with what's going on through your guys on Twitter and things like that. So no, you did not bore me whatsoever. I'm sorry if I bored you about little traditional fan bases in Britain and people supporting Man United when they shouldn't. They should support Accrington Stanley instead.
Oh, I love that. That's exactly the type of stuff that we like to learn about. There's so many shows that are just out there about wins and losses or who made the most money and things like that. And in our show, we like to show kind of the cultural side of football, if you will. And that's why we want to go tell the story of what's going on in Accrington, Stanley, or some team in the 6th or 7th tier, because to me, those are the real stories of football.
Of course they are. And if, by any means, if anybody over your side or anybody who's listening around the world wants to get their hands on any of the raw milks, all they have to do is drop me a message and I can send those out to them. They might get there a little bit slower than they would do usually at the minute. Yours are on the way as we speak. I don't know how Royal Mail will do in getting those to you. But yeah, if anyone wants one, just give me a shout and I can get them over to you. And you can read about, we have loads of different things in there as well. Like, just one final thing I need to mention is a friend of mine, Katie Mather, she wrote in the latest edition, a magnificent piece about what kind of beer you should be drinking for watching football. So that fits into what you were saying last time about what you were saying a little while ago with drinking on the pitch. So by all means, that's certainly worth a read as well. If you can drink when you're watching the game.
And you're on Twitter at Raw Milk Zine. That's at RAWMILKZINE. And that's the best way for folks to get in touch with you, right?
Definitely, yeah. Twitter's. We're on Instagram and Facebook as well, but Twitter is the most active platform at the minute. Definitely.
Fantastic. And that's one more time, that's at Raw Milk Zine on Twitter, where you could find Josh. And I really enjoyed the chat today, and we'll catch up with you again soon, because every time you come on, it's just a great time to talk about football and hear your passion for the game. And good luck with your fanzine, and I'm looking forward to getting my copies here in the mail.
Brilliant. Thank you for having me once again. Cheers.
Cheers, Josh. Have a great one.
You too.